Hello and welcome back to Reignite Your Soul. I'm your host, Laura Plahuta, and on this podcast, as you all know, we are opening our hearts, expanding our minds to embody an entirely new way of being. And I have a very special guest here today, my beautiful sister, Sarah. And we are going to be chatting today all about her journey of becoming a crunchy mom. And if for those of you who maybe don't know what that term is, we're also going to go into that because I just started hearing it a few months ago and I had no clue what it is. But I think it's safe to say I'm a crunchy mom now that I've had Lily. So I'm excited to have Sarah here, and she's just going to share a little bit more about her journey to becoming a crunchy mom, what the heck being a crunchy mom is, and yeah, we're so super happy that people here are listening, whether you're on YouTube or you're listening on the podcast. Welcome, welcome, and welcome, Sarah, to the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Nervous.
Yeah.
Excited.
I know. And so for those of you who don't maybe know Sarah, she has two beautiful girls. Maya, who is almost 5, which is crazy, and then little Noah, who just turned 2 in February. And so as she kind of went through her journey coming into motherhood, it's obviously I just went through that just recently. It's a huge initiation. Oh my God. You really can't like explain it to people who haven't gone through kind of even being pregnant and like having the baby and then stepping into being a mom. Like it's just like such a journey. So do you want to kind of start there? Maybe just sharing a little bit about your journey into motherhood?
Yeah. So with my oldest, who's almost 5, I had a hospital birth. I had the traditional hospital birth epidural. I had everything, which at that time, that's where I was and that's what I needed. And I didn't think twice about it. It's just what I needed to make it through getting that job done.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of like any toxins or anything. And then along came the world shutting down and having my second. I really started to question the things that were safe during pregnancy and then, or not safe during pregnancy, sorry, and then safe afterwards. It just really made me question, like, why is it safe not during pregnancy, but it's safe after? Like that didn't really make any sense to me. So I just really started to question everything. And I remember specifically one time my daughter was touching a table or going to touch a table that I had just cleaned with Windex. And I like yelled and I like pushed her away from the table just because I didn't want her to touch it. Cause at that point she was still like a little over a year. So she was putting everything in her mouth. So, I mean, the smell of that, if you know the smell of Windex, is
Oh yeah, it
like,
makes me like I can't remember where I was recently when somebody had like normal thing. I'm like, I think it was I don't know if it was mom or somewhere, but I was like, oh my God, like get rid of that. It's insane
yeah,
that that's like what we used to like use all of the time. Once you kind of
right.
shipped out of it, it's like so potent and like strong.
Yeah, you just pick up on these things now that I don't use it, I'm like, oh my God, somebody's got Windex or what is that?
Totally.
You just notice all these little things that I didn't even think twice about before. Like that's just how it was. That's just what we knew growing up. And
Yeah.
that's just kind of how it stayed. So yeah, I didn't want her to touch the table. So it really made me like, I don't know, it was like just something just clicked in my brain. I'm like, this is not right. I shouldn't have to worry about her touching anything.
Hmm.
So, and then obviously it just snowballed from there and we had the world shut down, COVID. So I was just like in a different state of mind. I was pregnant and I was very fearful at the time for just different reasons, I guess, than COVID itself. I don't know how much I can say on here,
You can say whatever you
but
want.
okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Free reign.
So yeah, I was just very fearful of, I guess, not of COVID itself, but of the opposite side of things and just how my life is going to look different, bringing another kid into this world. And that's, I guess, kind of besides the point, but that's where my brain was at. It was not at a very like mentally stable state. And so I went down a lot of like really, really dark rabbit holes and the toxic living rabbit holes. And it really, like, things really started to spiral. So I've really had to like rein myself back in and just remind myself, like, it all starts in the home. There's so much toxins I can't control, but there is so much that I can control. So I think once I kind of wrapped my brain around that and just started really controlling what was in my home, I think that made a big difference. And yeah, it just kind of really like
Yeah.
snowballed from there, from like the products I use in my home to like the food we eat to like the air we breathe, like just everything is really ramped up since I
Yeah.
was like 5 years ago, which is,
Yeah.
I think it's great because I couldn't imagine living any other way at this point. Um, but yeah, it was a big, big journey. And so now I'm just learning that balance. I can't control what my kids eat at daycare or at other people's houses, but I can definitely control what they have here. And it gives me a bit of a peace of mind knowing I'm doing my part at home.
For sure. Yeah. I know it's definitely a balance. Like you said, how you went down kind of like the dark wormholes. For those of you guys who don't know, my mom actually was like a big kind of like piece to us starting to awaken to all of the shady shit in the world.
Oh yeah, she was a huge part of
And she
that.
would like tell us this stuff. And we were literally like, Mom, stop, like, stop it. And
Yeah,
then
but it's
like
funny at the
over
time I thought she
time,
was nuts.
right? I know, right? And like there were so many times where I'm like, no, my body is just like so full right now. I can't handle this right now. Like it would just bring up so much fear. So it's definitely like the journey to being a crunchy mom is a journey.
That's
Because
it. It's a
like
journey.
literally everything that we've been taught and what we've been told is just like things are changing, you know? And I think too, like back then they didn't really know. Like mom thinking like all of the toaster strudels and stuff that we ate, you know, like she was just so busy. She had me, my sister, and my brother, you know, and she was busy like running a business and having 3 children. And it was like what was convenient to just feed the little bellies that were there, right? And it's just like the world's shifting a lot with kind of the priorities of things and getting back to more natural ways because it's insane. Like even now walking into like Walmart now, it's like or like any grocery store really. It's like you all of the inside aisles. I can't remember who it was that told me once, but it's like basically at a grocery store, just walk around the outside of
Yeah,
the
exactly.
store
That's
and
where you
that's
get
really
like, the
all you
Whole
need.
Foods.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like the naturalist foods is like on the outside wall of the store, and
Yeah.
all of the inside aisles are basically just junk, you
Right.
know? And so little trick for you. Because
Yeah. No,
it's
I love that tip. I love sharing that with everybody. And I think too, I love how you said that, like eating toaster strudels. So like I feel like most people don't know this, but if you look at the ingredients from like the 90s when we were kids to the ingredients now, they're 100% different. So back then there was a lot less ingredients in the
Mhm.
same toaster strudels that you have now. So it's not even like you're eating the same product. It's like completely different.
Right.
And everything is just sprayed with heavy pesticides and all that, which I don't like. I don't think it was as predominant then as it is now.
Why do you think
Which,
that is? Like I'm so curious around that. Like, why did all of this change all of a sudden?
yeah, honestly, I don't know. I feel like mass producing things, everybody's just trying to cut costs on everything and
That's true.
just make the biggest buck, making it as cheap as possible for themselves, but they want to make the most out of it. So I don't know.
It's true, yeah. I think
Definitely
even
not
like
good.
with like the preservatives and stuff, like now, like they ship them a lot longer distances as well, too. Like a
Yeah.
lot of our stuff comes from like across the world, and you're like, this is really strange.
Yeah, and it's interesting because everybody's like standards of like safe levels are different, right? Like,
Yeah. And it
yeah,
probably has a
like,
lot to do with the country you're in as well, because they're actually the ones that have the trade agreements, right?
right. Yeah.
And so they would be the ones kind of saying, like, yes, this can come into the country. Because when you look at like Europe, I know I've heard that like well, and I think you were saying even yesterday that they're looking in the States at banning like Lucky Charms and like some of these cereals and stuff now. So it's starting to come to North America, but in Europe and the UK, I know that it's been like when you look at the ingredients that they're allowed to have in the country, it's so different than actually what's here in Canada. So for whatever reason, it's just a lot slower to be implemented here. And I know Isogenics had a lot of issues as well with Health Canada and getting stuff in. So they had to kind of do some like shifting around to get the products into Canada. It's just so crazy to think because it's like you got McDonald's here and you've got all of these like shit in the stores and stuff already sitting here cozy, completely being restocked on the shelves like over and over and over again. Yet there's some really amazing products that are made outside of Canada that are wanting to come in that are really healthy and good for people. And they're like literally like takes years and years and years to get them approved, which is just wild.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of the problem. It makes you healthier. So, I mean, you're not going to rely on
Totally.
it if you're healthy and you don't need any medications or
Yeah.
whatever, you're not gonna need that. So why make people healthy?
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, it's a weird, twisted world we live in.
Oh, yeah. It's another rabbit hole, I think.
Right? How many rabbit holes do we want to go down today? So
So
back to your journey, kind of like from when you said like from Maya, like having more of the traditional kind of birth that we see here in North America, where it's a lot, well, it's very medicalized and you don't really have a say in what you're doing. It's more like they just tell you the route of like, this is the way that it's going. And I can share a little bit on here about my birth as well with Lily, because I kind of had like a mixed experience, which is actually like, it's interesting. I'm like grateful that I had the mixed experience. So I was having a home birth, a planned home birth. I was actually going to do it at my sister's place because I'm here with my mom right now, and it's an apartment, so didn't really want to have the baby in the apartment. So we had the pool, we had everything set up at my sister's place, and they went away to Niagara for the weekend to go to a water park with the girls and their family. So they were away, and that was when I went into labor on Friday night on March 7th. And we were here at my mom's house in Peterborough, and my water broke at midnight, and then started having the baby like basically here. I was 6 to 7 centimeters dilated before my midwives came. And then when they listened to Lily's heartbeat, she was skipping a beat every once in a while. So they're like, oh, you should probably just go into the hospital just as a safe measure. And I was like, yeah, that's fine, totally fine. And then we took the ambulance into the hospital and then got to go to the hospital. But it was very interesting kind of seeing the contrast of it, because my midwives were amazing. I know I've heard bad stories about midwives being very, like they're supposed to be kind of like the middle kind of ground, but some of them are still very more like traditional when it comes to that. But
yeah,
my midwives were absolutely amazing. So they were very great at like educating me on things, and I could ask as many questions as I wanted until I understood. Like some of our appointments were quite long, and Danny like didn't really understand most of it because I was just like firing off questions. And because I have a medical background as well, like I just have like a really good understanding of things. So I was really able to ask a lot of questions to understand before I made decisions. So that part of it was absolutely incredible. And we did it with the Lindsay midwives instead of the Peterborough ones for that reason. I just kind of had a better feeling about it. And then when I got to the hospital, it was so different because even like as soon as the doctor came in, I was on my hands and knees on the hospital bed, and the doctor came in. He's like, "Is this how she's delivering?" My midwife's like, "Yep."
but
I
I
can just
love that
imagine
too.
his face.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I wish I could be a fly on the wall there. Like, I really wish I was there just to see you like go against the grain, because I don't think that happens in the hospital. So what it just made
No,
me like love it.
totally, yeah. Well, I have the video. Mom videotaped it.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
I
need to see
told her
it.
to. And then I actually, it's incredible. I was actually like in between contractions. I'm like, Mom, are you filming this? And she was like, no. I'm like, well, can you please do it? I literally paused and told her to. I don't know how it came into my mind, but I'm like, I wanted to have the experience because I know with yours, when you had Noah, like we had it, and like it's just so beautiful and so cool to go back on and see. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, it's not like a very pretty thing that you want to just post everywhere. I mean, there are lots of Instagram accounts now with natural births and stuff that you can just
yeah,
see online and stuff like that, but not something that I would want to be putting online. But yeah, so when I first came in, that's what the doctor said. And midwives were just like, yep, that's how she's delivering. And then like it's just all for like their convenience. It's like a assembly line. And
oh,
he had somewhere like there was other births going on as well. So it's not as chill as just doing it at home where it's like they have nowhere to be besides there. So you can really just settle into it. But and then once I had the baby, when it came to cutting the cord, he like was like right on it, you know, like wanting to cut the cord. I'm like, can you just wait like a little bit just to cut the cord, please? And he like asked me why. He's like,
that's so
why?
like
Yeah. Pardon?
do your research.
Yeah, and like yeah, it was just interesting, you know, like he's just not used to it. And I could feel like I'm so empathetic. I can feel energy, and his energy was just so like he had a timeline that he was on, and like somebody was messing with his timeline that he
Right.
had planned, right? And I just like so calmly said, I'm like, I was just like, just because I would like to wait, like, thank you. And he waited a minute 30 longer before he asked me again. And to him, that was probably the longest time ever. But the only reason I know it was a minute 30 was just looking back at the video. I was like, oh, how long was it actually that we waited? You know, because he was like, well, the cord stopped pulsing. And I was like, okay, that's fine. As long as the cord stopped pulsing and like we waited that extra minute and a half, I'm like, okay, that's fine. You know, like when I was doing my research of all of it, like I looked up like a lotus birth, like where you literally keep the placenta on for like, and basically until it falls off itself. Like there's so many like different ways you can do it, right? From like back to like when they didn't have medicalized support with
Right.
it. Like that's just what
Right.
happened was it fell off naturally. Right. But it's like for me, I didn't want to go that far, like having to carry a baby around plus a cord and a placenta for like a week or so.
Oh
To
my
me,
God.
that seemed like a little bit like not something that I was wanting to do. I mean, like it all depends on how natural you want to go with it. Because I mean, like they did it like that for many, 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 many years before the modern medical system came in. But then there's
Right.
also the like being able to take what the medical system has and be like, okay, no, I'm grateful that they have this, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There, I mean, there's a balance. It's definitely needed at some point, but I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot where it's just very unnecessary too, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, having both experiences, I could really feel like the difference between, and even like when it came to some of the decisions of like not giving the antibiotic eye drops or like not doing certain tests, like they kind of like challenged me on it, even though I had all these conversations with my midwives, they were gone at this point. Like even mom at one point had to be like, can you give her a second to like, just like, can you leave for a second and then come back? And like I knew in my like I had already made the decision it was a no. But even just like the pressure of that person like questioning you, and then they start dropping all of these like, oh well, they could have a brain bleed and die, and like it's very serious and all of this stuff. So then like you obviously start getting into fear. But
Yeah. The
before,
fear
like I
tactic.
exactly, yeah. And like even at that point, I'm glad mom said kind of just go because I was already getting to the point where I almost would have said yes. Like
Right.
just go ahead and do it,
Yeah.
which totally wasn't what I wanted, but because of all of the fear, like it's like it happens, where you just give in to that because you don't want your baby to have like a crazy brain bleed. But like that's why I like the midwives because I really got to ask the questions where I got to like look at the statistics of it and like what's the likelihood, like what are the side effects of it, like what are like really understanding the full big picture before I was able to decide, so that when I went into that environment I was able to like stick with my guns. But I'm glad mom was there for that. But it
Yeah.
was interesting seeing both. So
Yeah.
um when I know it was very different for you between that and between Noah.
Hmm.
Where do you feel like, I know you kind of mentioned about like with Maya, like having the chemicals in the home and stuff like that. Like, how was the journey then, like from having Maya then into having Noah and then kind of continued moving out when it comes to being crunchy mom? And do you want to explain what a crunchy mom is? I know we haven't even done that yet.
Yeah. So I don't even, honestly, I don't even know the proper terminology for it, but I'm, from my take on it is just like, I don't like most of the stuff I bring into my home, well, all my chemicals, everything is like I use water to clean my house. But everything I do is like low tox, no tox, because it's like ideally you can't live a life that's zero tox. Like it's just not possible. You're always going to have something. So just bringing everything that comes into my home is like healthy stuff and then having that balance as well. I don't rely on the medical system for anything. I would rather treat everything at home with my homeopathy stuff, go see a naturopath, um, and not rely on the medical system unless I absolutely have to, life or death, pretty much. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's my take on it.
For sure,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool. And yeah, so how was your kind of transition then from like going from like Maya then? Like, because obviously, like you said, like, and you mentioned that like you can't be 100% no talks. It's
Yeah.
like you're gonna start with your life the way that it is, and you're gonna have freaking chemicals underneath your sink. You're gonna have like literally the water that you're drinking is gonna have shit in it. Like there's literally gonna be stuff everywhere. Like the clothes that you are wearing, like the bed sheets, like you could literally, like you said, go insane kind of thinking about everything around you that is toxic. I know
Yeah.
mom went, I think it was a mattress that she was wanting to buy, and like even just the smell of the mattress, once you get attuned to having no toxins in your life, like for the most part, like when as you can smell it, you're like
Yeah.
like I smell it. Like even I remember at the beginning of my pregnancy with the shower water here at mom's place, she didn't have the filter on it yet, and I like obviously, for those of you guys maybe who don't know this, when you're pregnant, your smell just gets like so like crazy intense. And so I could smell the chlorine like so much more than like what I did. Like I'd brush my teeth and I'd gag from the chlorine smell. So we ended up getting a water filter from Sarah actually, for the shower, and it like made such a big difference. But you can really tell when there's the chemicals there. So going from like having everything there, how was that journey to like where you are now? Like, what did you kind of start with when you did it?
Um, I I think I took the wrong approach to it. I threw out everything. Like I
Sounds like
kind of,
you.
kind of an all or nothing kind of person. So honestly, like I was in that state of mind. I'm like, I don't want any of this in my home. I threw all of it out. I don't care if it was brand new, it was gone. And I replaced it with what I thought at the time was better products. Turns out they were just greenwashed, which essentially just means like the company can, there's really not very strict regulations on what a company can say. So they can say
Yeah,
anything, even though it's not true. They'll use words like natural, organic, and like no parabens, no whatever.
that's pretty
Um,
wild.
but it's loaded with other stuff. So really it's not any different. So there's lots of companies that do that. So I switched to those products thinking I was doing something better. And then yeah, I finally just like did a lot more research and I went down good rabbit holes, I'd say. And I figured out the products that I now use. And yeah,
Yeah.
but a lot of it started actually with one simple conversation with a friend who didn't vaccinate any of her kids since day one. So her oldest is the same age as Maya, and then her youngest is the same age as Noah. So um, yeah, it started with one conversation how we don't have to vaccinate our kids to go to school. And that was like, I think that's when the real switch happened. And I was like, okay, what do you mean by that? Because that was my understanding. You have to vaccinate your kids to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
But here in Ontario, you do not. You just have to get an exemption, which is amazing. So um, yeah, that really opened a whole new can of worms, I would say, on everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool because a lot of the things, like, I don't know if that used to be a thing where you couldn't exempt. So then that story kind of just carried on.
Oh, you
But
could
like,
always do it.
you always could, yeah, it's weird. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
they just don't tell you that, right? Obviously.
yeah. And it's
There's
very
always
like rare that people do that. It's becoming more and more popular. I was actually just last night reading a book Mom has here. I can't remember. It's all about women's health. I can't remember the doctor that wrote it. Mom's obsessed with her. But it has everything in it about women's health. Like I read so many pages in there with my pregnancy and this. Like it has everything. I'll put the book in the comments for anybody who wants to um, dive into this book because it's incredible. But it was saying I was reading all about vaccinations because we haven't vaccinated Lily yet, but I'm like I really want to like understand,
yeah.
like before I say no completely, then I want to understand. And it was just like sharing like about like all the neurotoxins that are in them. And one example it gave in there was about the hepatitis B shot that they give, and it's I think it was 136 micrograms of I think it might have been mercury or no, aluminum. I don't know, one of the heavy metals anyway. And that's what is in this one shot. And it says like they have the limit for infants basically or babies is like something like 17 micrograms is like the upper limit for what they can tolerate. And in one injection, they're giving
And that's fun, and they
130
get
something.
multiple in one go.
Right? I know it was saying too that like they used to get like up until the age 7 back in the day. I think in the 80s it used to be 10 that they would receive, and now it's like over 70 that your
Yeah.
child receives before they're 7. And the
Yeah.
thing is that they test them individually, but they don't test what they do in combination. And that's what she was saying was the biggest issue. And that's why they're seeing such a big rise in autism and ADHD and all of these other things because they don't test them in combination. And it's like, and it also mentioned back in the 80s, Ronald Reagan got rid of the thing where they could get sued and all of these things when it came to that stuff, right? So it's like there's just so much education when it comes to all of this stuff. So
Yeah.
with whatever we're doing at this point, like whatever we're deciding yes to, it's like we have to educate ourselves first before just going with the flow of things, which is
Oh, totally. Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, like if you look, there's black box warnings on all the vaccines, but your doctor will never tell you that. And if you ask to see it, they're gonna push back because they don't want you to see that.
Yeah.
Right? Like that should be, so I guess that was one of the big main reasons why I went with the naturopath, or not a naturopath, a midwife the second time, because I didn't know that all of the stuff, the vitamin K, vaccines, like all that stuff was an option. I had no
Yeah.
idea. I was never told that was an option going through the medical system, which I feel like informed consent is something that needs to happen. Like you need to know the risks when they don't tell you any of that. So when I finally like took it into my own hands and went with a midwife, and even then I still questioned things that they told me because like I don't believe everything. I mean, they're still trained in the same, I think this is a whole other can of worms, but the same school system that's run by the government. So it's like, they're taught what they need to know as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make it right either. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it really made me just question like everything.
Yeah. And even from a liability standpoint in North America, like it's always like a cover your ass thing in the medical system,
Yeah.
like, and it's the fear of that too, right? It's like, even though, yes, you have a signature saying that you signed off that you didn't want this thing, there's still fear from like the provider, like, oh my God, what if this person sues me because I advise that they have this and then shit goes awry and then they get sued, right? So there's so much like unconscious stuff that happens as well from like the people that are using these fear tactics. Like a lot of the time, the fear tactics are well intentioned, but it's just like all stuff that people are unconsciously doing,
Yeah.
like they go through their school system, they learn, they don't learn both sides of it so they can make a decision because in their workplaces, like it's all a part of a governmental system that only sees things one way. So it's really up to the individual provider to be able to do that. And even a lot of the time in the normal healthcare system, you'll hear people like where they're like, I didn't say this, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's definitely people that are awake. I feel like those are my kind of people. Give me
yeah,
my options. If I need this, or like when homeopathy won't work, then sure, maybe I'm like inclined to do that. But tell me like what's gonna happen, what's the risks? And the
yeah,
percentage, that's huge too for me.
for sure.
Like
Yeah, because
one
most
in
of
a
them are
million
tiny.
chance of side effects, or is it like a 1 in 5? Because that's gonna change my decision. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And that just shows, like most of the stuff, when you actually look at it, it is like a tiny percentage, yet they blanket everyone just because of that like small percentage. And it is all just covering their ass, like that's what it is. But
Yep.
that's where it is. Like we've just got to educate ourselves to make the decisions and just make your decision. And I think also too, like I really learned on mine, like I went to the Peterborough midwives first and I just didn't get a good vibe. I called the Lindsay midwives and I was talking to Katha on the phone and I was crying and like in tears, just like so grateful because one of the first conversations we had, because I'm a negative blood type and Danny's a positive blood type. So typically they give Rogaine and like there's a lot of stuff where you hear like, oh, if you don't take Rogaine, like it's the end of the world. For your other babies, you're never gonna have other babies again, like all this other stuff. And so it was a lot of education for me to like learn up on that, to be able to say no to getting, and I didn't end up getting it.
Yeah.
And Lily's a positive blood type. So I like called her and the very first thing she did on the phone was she was like, oh yeah, we've got a book here called Anti-D here at the midwife, like you can borrow it and whatever, because they have a huge list like thing of books that you could take and just whatever. And that was like in the first conversation. So I'm like crying, just so thankful that I like received somebody that was just so open to like other things. And that book's actually from a doctor over in the UK that wrote it and did all the research and stuff like that. So it just hasn't been adopted here yet. But I was so grateful for that.
Yeah. I think another thing too, when I had Noah, it was COVID. So we also had the bookshelf, but it was like barriered off. So you could not access their books, but yeah.
Wow. And you did some course. Did you do courses on that? Anything for your birth or no? Because I know you've done many courses. No,
I
you
just
did
went
some.
in with it like it's gonna work, and it did. It was
Yeah,
the best experience of my life. Like you saw it, it
yeah,
was great. I feel
yeah.
like I had no pain. It was like so peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was. I was there, guys, and it was just like it gave me a whole new perspective of like labor and birth and stuff. And I was definitely one of those people that was on Instagram following all of the natural birth the video that I would show Danny. He's like, stop showing me these. I'm like, no, but look, if you use the breath and you just breathe, like you can breathe through your pain and all this stuff.
And it's funny with that too, because like I think it's really important, like that I share. I was not into any breathing. Like I was like
Yeah,
always a super tense kind of person. And for me to go through that, being able to do it with breathing, having no experience, I think I
yeah,
started practicing a week before I had her. Um, like just says it all. Like I think just being
totally.
home in a different atmosphere like made the world of a difference. Having like Yama playing and like the water and yeah, it was just totally different. Like
Yeah.
saging and all the things that we did.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting too, because with mine, everything happened so quickly that I didn't get to do any of that stuff. And it made such a big difference. Like, honestly, as soon as the midwives went, and I was doing great, like breathing through everything, and it was fine until like they went to go call the hospital because I could hear them on the phone in the other room and talking, and you can hear the fear in their voice, and I could
Yeah.
feel it. So then my mind is then trekking over to where they are instead of being present with my body and my process and what's going on with that. So that's for me when it really got challenging, was when we had to then do that, hop in the ambulance and then go there. But
Yeah.
it's so possible, like, especially when you do it at home, to be able to do it. And obviously not everybody's going to be able to do it at home, like there's lots of
Yeah.
things that it is safer to do it in the hospital, like even with Lily's heartbeat
Mhm.
skipping, it's a good thing to do. Like, we're so blessed to have the healthcare that we have. However, it's really cool to also be able to see a lot more people being open to have midwives and to be able to do them at home too, because it's
Yeah.
really like the environment that you create for it, it really sets the tone for everything. And when you
Yeah.
feel safe and comfortable too, like naturally the body is going to have the baby a lot quicker. Like, they were
Yeah.
so like surprised at how quick mine was, 5.5 hours for my first, but I was so relaxed and I was conscious about when my body was tensing, then I would relax it right away. And it makes sense. Your cervix isn't going to want to dilate if you're in fear or you're like scared. It's like, nope, not the time. Let's close up again. you know, not the
Yeah.
time to be having this little baby. Whereas when you're like nice and relaxed and cozy, then they like, it's a lot shorter of a process.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because my friend that was telling me she's doing a home birth, I'm like, you're fucking nuts. Like, how could you do that at home? Like, you're crazy. And then it was a point in COVID where they weren't letting spouses in the hospital. I'm like, that's not an option. I'm doing it at home. Like a
Yeah.
complete 180 switch. I'm like, that's not an option. I will not go to the hospital for anything unless it was like life or death. But
Yeah.
even I was like, it's not happening. I'm not wearing a mask in labor. I'm not like, it was just a hard no for me. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that really pushed me to like this is my only option and I need to do it this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
like how you said that, because it's like sometimes some of the most challenging kind of things that come up really do push us in the direction that we need to
Yeah.
go. It's all the universe steering us
Yeah, no,
where we need to
totally.
go.
I believe
Although in the
that.
moment we're like,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, amazing. Is there anything else that you'd like to kind of talk about or share before we kind of end off this episode? Because I know we could chat like forever, and I feel
Yeah.
like we'll definitely have you back on for some more episodes and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
is there anything that you kind of want to share on this one?
Um, I feel like at the end of the day, everybody's like low tox journey is gonna look different, but you got to do what's like best for you and for your budget.
Mhm.
Um, like you can only do so much, and especially today's economy, it makes it extra difficult to do things. But however, I
Yeah,
have found that like making my own bread and all that, I'm actually saving like a lot of money. So
for sure. Yeah.
to hone in on these skills and just be determined to make it work, because it will.
hmm Yeah, I feel like
Mhm.
you really have to slow down. And I think that's the biggest thing that most people have issues with, because you've been so conditioned to go, 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 that in order to start doing stuff yourself and actually like making the stuff yourself, which is obviously so much cheaper than say
Yeah.
buying even the healthy products, right? But do you feel like it's like a transition where you go from like the toxic stuff to then the like the bot stuff that's low toxic? And then from there, then you can maybe start making it.
I don't know. I feel like I definitely did that, and I was buying the healthier alternatives in the grocery store, but the price of them was like
Yeah.
insane. So I'm like, I can make this for 10 times cheaper than I'm buying it. So I'm just,
Mhm.
that's what I'm gonna do. Like, I'm just
Cool.
gonna do that to make or save money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I love that. And did you end up putting together a guide for people with some of the swaps and stuff?
It's in the works.
In the works. Woo!
Yeah,
Cool.
big things
Amazing.
are coming.
That's awesome. When do you feel
Yeah.
like it's going to be ready?
I think the goal is by June,
June. Cool.
maybe
Awesome. Well, if
middle
you're
of May.
watching this episode after June, check it in the comments because I'll definitely put it in there. And then if you're not, if it's before June, then just feel free to follow Sarah on Instagram. What's your Instagram, Sarah? It's Sarah O'Neill.
At It's Sarah O'Neill.
Yeah, cool. And I will put that down in the comments below. But I know she's been like massive on my kind of journey of getting into the low tox kind of stuff because I had a little bit of a different journey where I took off traveling, so I didn't have to worry about all the home stuff. But now that I'm back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so much to learn. Even with having Lily and stuff like that, I'm always like texting her, being like, hey, do you have a suggestion for this? And she's like, yeah, do this. I'm like, oh, perfect.
I love it though, because I've done all the research. I've done it all. So if I can help somebody do it, like, I mean, obviously I encourage everybody to do their own research and make their own decisions, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I honestly, I love it. If I have somebody that I trust, and I obviously trust you,
Yeah.
I'm like, some of the research I don't care to do,
Right.
It's
Right.
like, and one of the biggest things I think is with this stuff is you feel a difference,
Yeah.
like you will feel different when you start making these shifts. And for me, that's always like the biggest indicator of like if something's working or not, is if you're feeling better
Yeah.
after implementing this stuff. And even now, like with the scents and the smells and all of this stuff, like, when stuff isn't good. Like you could tell me that it is, and I'd be like, no.
Yeah.
Or even just trusting your intuition with things too, or trusting your intuition with the people that you're receiving advice from. Like at the end of the day, like we know. So yeah, that's amazing. So thank you so much for being on here. I can't believe it took
Oh,
us this long to have you
um,
on here, but I'm very, very grateful. Thank you for sharing your journey with everybody. And thanks for putting together that the ebook so that everybody can value from that. And on
yeah.
Sarah's Instagram as well, she shares lots of fun stuff as well, recipes and all of these stuff that you can make at home and stuff like that too. So definitely go and give her a follow. But yeah, thank you so much for being on here. Thank you to everybody who's tuning in either over on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're catching this episode from. We're very, very grateful for you. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, go ahead down right now and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment. Let us know your biggest kind of aha moment or your takeaway, or share a story or whatever the heck you feel like putting into the comments. We would love to hear. And we will see y'all on the next episode.
Amazing.
Bye. Thank you, Sarah.
Bye.